So anyway, everyone knows who I am. So I'm Jerry Freed, and Maura Freed is over there. So we're here really as a memorial service, and Maura wanted people to not dress in black because it's not a funeral; it's a memorial service, and it's a celebration of Mill Freed, her life, and really it's kind of a lot of lives because I think as a lot of people here are connected with the Freeds through Fire Island, and there's people connected with the Freeds from their connection with the arts, and family members, and others from different phases or times of their lives. But my dad died in 2008, and certainly Janine Pollock is is still part of that generation. But most of the people who are here are of a generation that's the next generation, I guess. But a lot of them were Fire Island people who knew my parents from Fire Island and were part of that group, which I think was a kind of unusual time and place that I think still has a lot of that same feeling. But I think when Cy and Mill were at the heart of that group of people who were part of that Fire Island community, that was a special time, like in history, I think, in a way. They kind of found this place and they made this place where it was kind of like maybe it was the essence of that kind of, it takes a village to raise children, like. Yeah, it was like and Lisa would say everyone, pretty much like the kids were released out onto the the cosmos, and as long as they came back for dinner or
but we all took care of them.
And eventually made and it didn't really matter whose parents or who, everyone like took responsibility for everyone else, and that's kind of like an important life lesson that I think at least the people who grew up in that world understood, that it was, I'd say almost like kind of a civic duty. I don't want to go into the government area, but there was a certain responsibility.
Yeah, really well, Jer.
There was a certain way that everybody took care of everyone else, and took responsibility for it. It was kind of a shared experience, and that's something that was kind of inspiring to me. I guess I have a few objects here that I just wanted to say a couple of things about that I think would be meaningful to most people. So I think this is my mom Mill was she was a painter her whole life. She never thought she was very good or very important or anything like that, but she painted for almost her entire life. And this painting is not typical of her paintings, but it was a self-portrait. Above our bed we have this really gorgeous, surreal, abstract landscape that looks like some place from another planet, that's really evocative and strange. And she did a lot of different things in a lot of different styles. This is her own self-portrait with brushes in her hand, but most people knew her with this kind of thing in her hand, because I say that she was a fearless person. It wasn't so much that she was fearless like that she would deal with danger. It was more like, before the internet, before all this information was available everywhere, she would just do, she didn't assume that she couldn't do anything. So if it was like, I don't know, heavy construction, pouring concrete, building, she built a playhouse for us that was, she got the lumber, she looked up she went to the library, she figured out how to do it, and she'd build whatever she wanted to, and fix whatever she wanted to. Our house was, I have to say, a total fire trap, and it's amazing that it's still standing, because any lamp that you picked up had usually about 4 different splices along the way, where the cord had been laid longer, shorter, different switch. And if you looked at all the tables, they had different. It was like tree rings. You could tell she had made a table shorter and then longer, taller. That's what she did. She just, she was fearless that way. But I think the main thing was that in her marriage, she was a partner with. Okay, this is part of get a little tricky. I'll get it together. Remember, I'm an experienced politician, so I'm supposed to keep my emotions under control. But
boy, you're failing really funny.
So, they were a team. My parents, and a lot of the art that's on the walls is my dad's art. My dad was kind of like he was the big personality, kind of
Sure was.
more of, I guess, kind of a game show host personality, and my mother was kind of less, I think less seen and less known by people because she was
She was the anchor, baby.
She was the anchor, yeah, or she was, in some ways she was a supporting actor, or something like that.
She was the anchor.
But in our family, in some ways I think she was the grounding. My dad was all over the place. He was wild. He painted a million things. He did a million things, and she was the one who kind of made our family work. And I think that's the way, frankly, the best marriages work, where you got two different people with different backgrounds and they figure out a way to overlap what their interests, the common interests and then the different interests. And that's, to me, how this whole project of civilization and evolution makes, not obvious right now, but in the long run, I think it will be a better world, let's just say.
From your lips to God's ears.
So I have the hammer. People who are in Fire Island recognize this kind of face. This is not a rock that my father did. These are a lot of my father's rocks, and I said you can take those. There's a whole wall in the kitchen that's just all these rocks that were done by an artist named Anita Steckel, who did this huge wall. But I think for Fire Island people, that has some meaning.
You need to show one of your father's works now.
We do. Well, they're all over the place.
No, the rocks.
Oh, the rocks. Well, I don't have any big ones here, but you can look at these later. This is a cutting board from Fire Island, which again, we have a lot of things left over that are significant, and then the Scrabble set as well. But I wanted to show you.
Your sister takes over.
Yeah, I wanted to show you this picture. This picture was, my mother spent pretty much the last 3 months of her life with us in Montclair, and I really want to thank my sister Maura for helping me understand that that her being out of it, and not being part of a residential hospice but being at home would really make a huge difference, and that there was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't really obvious on the surface. And the reason why it wasn't obvious is because my mother was somebody who never complained about anything. And the reason why being in a hospice, residential hospice, wasn't great for her was because she didn't complain about anything. And all of the attention goes to the people who are, the squeaky wheel kind of thing. But this is my mother, I guess she's probably about 5 years old or 6 years old, and her sister in front. And they grew up in a, I don't even know if they have a name for it. Probably nowadays you'd probably call it a, illegal orphanage or something. But she lived with a family in Nyack, New York, and her parents were not terribly, let's just say that they didn't really get the parenting thing. Her dad dad wanted to be an artist. He worked in the garment district. Mostly he worked machines, and was an immigrant who made a living and gave his kids, particularly, well, let's just say, they provided for their children the way a lot of families do, but didn't really have the kind of deep emotional connection. And my mom's father was not a real big presence emotionally for her. And her mother wanted to be a singer, opera singer, and spent a lot of her time on that, and basically decided that she and her sister would be better off, and this was, she was born in 1920, would be better off, living in a place that, in this case, was a place where all these other kids, and, and for many years of her early life, my mother lived with this family in Nyack, New York. And this picture was opposite her bed. And, my mother, even though her short-term memory wasn't good, would go through and, that's Uncle Bill and Aunt Ray, and, she knew who these people were. And, I said there was a dog there, right? Oh, yeah, the dog, he got hit by a car, and, her short-term memory isn't good, but, she could go through this picture and tell you who the people were and what this was like. And, I think one thing about my mother is that she really didn't, she didn't worry about things, she wasn't filled with anxiety. She was kind of used to, I think, the world wasn't all about her. And she was fine with that. And of course, that was a good partnership with my dad because, you know, he was a big focus of attention. But the way that worked for her was that she was the best. I always said, you know, if there is, you know, some kind of nuclear holocaust, Armageddon, she'd be the best person to, you know, you should go next to her because she'll be like, yeah, some people died, things got burned up, but, you know, whatever, we'll work it out. And that was kind of her attitude. She had a very, you know, I've said, especially close to, you know, her death, she just had a really great attitude. You know, she really felt like things are going to be okay, and you don't really need to sweat those, you know, spending a lot of time worrying about things is just not very productive, and she never did that. She just moved ahead from different things. And, you know, not that she had an easy life, but I think what they shared, what the two of them shared together, and that larger extended family did was a pretty amazing, creative, interesting life. And I think towards the end, that's what I learned, I think, the most from her, spending time with her, is that she was at the very end, she kind of came back to being what she was, as maybe some of you might have remembered her from back then, you know, like doing stuff, you know, like I would ask her to, you know, like I cook a lot, and she was not eating very much where she was staying in this residential hospice, but when she came home, she loved to eat, and she would, you know, she loved food, and you know, I cooked a lot because she liked to eat, and I love cooking for people, so I would sort of set her up with onions and, you know, peppers. If you want to, you know, I'm not saying you need to work to be here, but if you want to help out, you could just, you know, chop stuff or whatever. So a lot of the last couple of months, it's like she was my prep cook, and she would sew up. We have a dog, you know, is very puppy-like and tears up all these animals. So my mother would thread needles.
Yeah, they're not real.
Stuffed animals, yes. Sewing them. Sorry. Although she would have, surgery would, you know, she would have done that if it was necessary, I'm saying. But she would sew up, you know, these stuffed animals that, you know, their puppy had torn up, which I can't thread the needle, but she could do that and do that. So she actually, I think she was trying to help out, but also she liked being engaged. We'd go shopping together. Anytime I went shopping, you know, I'd usually take her. She could push a shopping cart. A week before she died, we went for a walk, you know, just right nearby. Went to a deli, got some stuff, and then walked home. So she really she kind of came back to being more of who she was in the way I think I remembered her from being a young child. And yeah, it was really pretty amazing. And I think I kind of went back to maybe the way I was before I was. There's a picture of her when she graduated. Just went past there. She graduated college 2 years before I did. She went to college later in life. You know, she went to Hunter College, got a Bachelor of Arts, you know, to be an artist. And she at the very end, she kind of went back to a certain time in her life, and I went back to sort of before all that adolescent stuff piles up, when people, you know, define themselves in a certain way and wrestle with their relationship with their parents, and you know, it was kind of, it just was a really, she had a very great death. So this is not a sad event.
It was really quite wonderful.
We were very lucky, and I'm very grateful for all the things that came together. And at the very end, Toby, you know, our middle son, and Maura came after work. Came on a Friday after work. You know, Toby came and Maura came, and you know, our dog was there, and she was always very excited. You know, very interested in the dog. The dog was like really energizing. The dog has also a very good attitude. Our puppy, and it was just a really good death. I'd be grateful for a fraction of the quality of death that she had, but also the quality of life that she had. So. I guess that's all I really had to say. Thank you all for coming. It really, you know, I'm grateful to everybody who came, and I think I'm going to pass it over to Maura, who has a few words to say, and you know, and after that, if anyone has just, you know, maybe a minute or two, you know, some reminiscence or something, and I'd say it's a kind of communal thing. So this is about my mother, but it's also kind of about the family, and you know, so my dad gets lumped into that. They're pretty much a team.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm not a politician, so I'm going to speak from the heart. I'm very, very happy to be here among family and friends. I am so grateful to have a 97-year-old mother who had quality of life at the end. I think all of us should hope for this kind of scenario. I know people with parents much younger who died, frankly, deaths that are indescribably difficult for the surviving people to get through. So I want to acknowledge Joyce and Erwin, who passed away last year. My father, obviously, quite a few years ago. It's amazing. She was the oldest of all of them, but she lasted long as 97 years old. Up to the last day, she wanted to work, which was amazing. It identified her. She loved the idea that she wanted, that she was working. She didn't retire till she was 70, and she would have taken a job probably at 95 if they would have offered one to her. One of the funnier things that I remember is that she said, I could do steno. Everybody needs stenographers. And I'm like, I think that might be a little bit outdated at this point, but it was amazing because when I think of Lucas and his love for languages and my love for languages too, she used to write down her pins and her passwords in stenography. I don't think any of us could do that anymore. It's pretty amazing, really. She loved to travel also. A lot of the pictures that I picked to put up there today were from our travels. I wrote down some of the places that we went to. And it wasn't that long ago. We were in Bermuda about 3 years ago. It wasn't because I didn't want to, take long. It was because I didn't want to take long plane flights, that we stayed more close to home. She would have preferred that we go somewhere more exotic, frankly. But we went to Bermuda, France, Holland, Belgium, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Mexico, Panama, Colombia, Aruba, Galapagos, Alaska, LA, and some places more local also. Some tremendous memories, bonding experience, just amazing to have that opportunity to bond with her in that way. Again, everything Jerry said was true. She was extremely low maintenance. It wasn't about where she wanted to go, it was where I wanted to go. Just an incredible woman, I think. Extremely low maintenance, but just so easy to be around. I don't know if I have anything more.
Hey, you said a lot.
Can I ask you a question? The two of you, can you tell us a little bit of how Cy and Millie met? And because I don't know that all.
It's the Hunts. Wasn't it social work? I'm not sure.
My understanding of how they met was that they had, Joyce and Cy knew each other from the welfare department. My dad he was in a family he had three older sisters, and he was like the baby and kind of the golden boy, and this whole Jewish immigrant family with the dad working in the garment district, the whole goal of this family was to produce productive, intelligent human beings. And so all the three older sisters went to work as secretaries. They went to secretarial school. They got jobs. They raised money so that my dad could be an accountant. That was their goal. Now my dad was a very good high school student, and then went to City College of New York, got in, and to study accounting, and he hated accounting. His revelation, I believe, I think of it as like the move from Brooklyn to Manhattan. What he discovered was that the arts were like what life is about, what culture is about, what civilization is about. So he became a lover of opera, of dance, of theater, of classical music. He just was a huge fan of culture, and and he got his degree, barely eking it by through City College, and he got a job to make some money in the welfare department, and that's where he met Joyce. I guess Joyce did she work there before she became a teacher?
Yeah.
The welfare department, so she was there also. And he had gotten some job as, I guess it was some kind of caseworker thing. It was probably nothing that he was particularly qualified to do, but it was a job. And he met Joyce, and I think Joyce introduced them. I don't know how Joyce knew my mom. But
I have no idea. I know that Cy and Mill worked together. I mean, Cy and my mother worked together at the welfare office. I have no idea how Cy and Mill met.
Yeah, we're talking about like late 40s. So
Hey, back then, people introduced each other.
maybe that's true. There was no
Like, hey, I'm going out, but I need another.
That's right. They didn't have the whole internet dating thing worked out.
Way better than that.
But anyway, so they met, and I can imagine anyway my mother being like an artist and always painting. And if you looked at if you're on Facebook friends, there's pictures of my mother with her paintbrush painting. They lived on the Upper West Side. She was an artist, and he was working his way out of, I guess, being a career that he didn't want. And actually Dave Pollock, who Amy Pollock is here somewhere over there, the Pollocks over there. So Dave Pollock he worked in the film business, and they worked at 630 9th Avenue, which is the film building, still the film building known as the film building in New York, and that's where the welfare department was. And my dad, when I think he was like 29 years old, and he was a caseworker, and he met Dave Pollock and started talking to the people who were in film, and just said like, that's cool. That's the kind of job I want. And so he was like, had a position, with a good salary, and he quit the job and worked as a messenger for, it might have been Dave's company, but this was about probably 1949 or 1950. He, kind of gave up his career to go into the film business, and and never looked back. And Dave died, I guess
77.
When did he die?
77.
77. Okay, so yeah, he died. But
I don't know which of them took the other to Fire Island, but I know that David shared a house with your mom and dad and a couple of other guys in Ocean Bay Park. And I don't know whether David took them to Fire Island or your parents took them, and the Hunts all went at the same time. You did what? Do you know, Greg?
yeah, Greg might know about that.
I think
The Hunts came first.
The Hunts came first.
This is my recollection.
this is probably boring as shit to everyone here that's not from Far
Hey,
Island.
how long ago was that? What year was that, Greg?
It was like around 1950, I'm guessing, but I think
Okay, so
like Stan
same
Russell.
time as my mom and my brother.
Yeah,
Same
but
time.
there's some other people involved. Stan Russell
Right.
was involved, and the Isons, Norm and Terry Eisen.
Yeah.
There was this whole circle of people, and who knows
It's a
who met who first.
But the question was how did they meet? So I think it happened kind of organically, but but I think a lot of it was my dad, being attracted to the arts and everything
Right.
else, and my mother being an artist, or of course my mom had worked a day job and everything also, like the way you have to do these days when you want to be an artist. But I think it was fairly organic, and I think that Fire Island business, I agree. It's sort of inside baseball for some people. Like to understand what the meaning of that is. But so. Anyway, if anyone, Janine, you want to? If you do, please come up here and say a few words.
No. But,
Oh, come on up here.
No.
Actually, I love it. The reason why I want you to do this is because we did this for my dad, up about 8 years ago, and it was really just so great to have those
So
reminiscences.
they were a wonderful couple. They complemented each other beautifully. And a story that I want to tell about Millie, it's quick and easy, or more about Cy. Cy told David that Millie really could fix anything. She could do anything, and nothing was ever a problem. And I always thought of Millie as that it's not a problem. She could take care of anything. And Cy said if he had a brain tumor, he'd tell Millie, and she'd go to the library and get a book and take care of it. And she was lovely. She was just a wonderful woman. Anyway, that's all.
Well, I've done a couple of things.
Oh, come on up here.
So my indelible memory of Mill was she was always doing carpentry, either at your house or at my parents' house. And my parents' house on Fire Island, there was an upstairs, and at one point they decided to turn it into a Casbah. They put all these fabrics against the walls. And so who did they turn to do this? The carpentry was Mill Freed, of course. And my memory of Mill is she was up there with a hammer, and she had 5 or 6 nails sticking out of her mouth. And she would hammer a nail, and then she would take one out of her mouth, and that was Mill. Also, Mill and my mother laughed about something for years, and it was this. I don't know if this is going to be as funny as it was, but listening to them laugh about it. But back in the 60s in Fire Island, there were costume parties all the time. I mean, every weekend there was a costume party. And one weekend, it wasn't a costume party, but it was a black and white party, meaning that everybody had to wear black and white. And Joyce and Mill were there at a party. They had a couple of drinks, and they might have had a couple of, puffs of marijuana. And at one point they're talking about someone, and Joyce was like, I don't remember, who is this person? And Mill pointed to someone in this middle of this black and white party with 100 people dressed in black and white, and Joyce was like, who is it? And Mill said, it's a person over there in black and white. And 25, 30 years later, they were still laughing about the black and white. The other thing, I don't know if Mill was a great cook or not, but I remember that Mill made a really good tuna fish sandwich. And I remember that because
No, wait a second. Now, my memory is that your mother made a great tuna fish sandwich. Now, I don't know. This is a contradiction here. I'm sorry.
This is a mutual tuna fish sandwich admiration society here.
No.
But, what my memory is that Mill would take the tuna and the mayonnaise, but she would dice a little bit of celery and put it in there so it had a crunchiness. And my mother Joyce was too lazy to deal with the celery, and I used to like the crunchiness of Mill's. But anyway,
Always greener on the other side.
But anyway, regarding Mill and Cy, it was like Joyce and Irwin. It was like they were together so long. It was almost like they became one organism. It's hard to think.
Like the 4 of them.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But anyway, I think I mentioned this when I was emailing, or I don't know, something. But to me, Mill was Bud Abbott to Cy's Lou Costello.
Thank you. Go on, Mick.
First of all, for those of you who aren't privy to what Fire Island was about, how many people have friends with a fort or a box kite that they live in? I had 2 such families to hang out with, and as you just mentioned, every time you were in these houses, you were a member of the family. You weren't some stranger. Even when Greg's mother started to get a little leery of letting her son hang out with me, I was still welcome in the house.
With good reason.
Absolutely.
I was going to say the same thing.
However, I still cannot reach. I'll never be the character your parents were or Cy was, and Millie was obviously the glue in that household. She knew how to make the Kool-Aid, is all I can say. It was a wonderful place to be as a child. We were always being stimulated and appreciated and taken care of by the parents. And I hope the kids who are growing up these days can have the same kind of experiences.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Millie Selsom, it was just the same kind
Yes.
of inspiration is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I mean, really, we had it
Even
all.
Howard.
We had your parents, we had Millie, we had.
It was
all.
like living in a kibbutz. It just wasn't conservative.
Yeah. And we didn't do any work.
We actually got to do some sometimes because parents enjoyed doing things like putting the stuff back together. So if you wanted to, you could grab a hammer too, and Millie would show you what nail to pound.
Yeah.
It was all good, and I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your parents with me. And I'm glad we all got to grow up together.
It was a community.
Yes.
Anyone else? So that's fine. That's cool. When it comes down to it, I'm really glad everyone could come together, and we're all here. I know these services are about kind of getting memories out and getting people together, and grateful that everyone did come together here. These pictures on the wall, these are, you know, my dad's pictures. I think we have enough so that everyone can take one of them. You know, hopefully this won't be some violent confrontation, people fighting over pictures, but anything that's unframed, take, and then the rocks, as I said before. So, you know, please feel free to take a picture, you know, take one with you. Kathy?
Oh, yeah, I'll just say a word.
Oh, good. Kathy,
My
yeah.
name's Catherine, and
Come
I
on.
came to know Mildred, whom I call Mildred, not Mildred, and Cy through the festival, the Avant-Garde Festival of New York. And Andy is here also from the festival.
Tell us what that was, because a lot of people here might not know about that part of their lives.
Oh, it was a huge, huge party. Cy was an anchor to it. I was doing some work to kind of help Charlotte and Frank. I called, well, I'll start by saying, every year, Charlotte and Frank had a huge festival. It was like a gift.
And this was
for New
Charlotte.
York City. Charlotte Mormon, who you may know as the topless cellist. She was arrested for that reason, but she was doing a very serious classical piece written by Namjoon Pike, and it was for an invited audience. It wasn't open to the public. And she did this piece and was arrested for performing topless. And the same week they made Go-Go Girls, topless Go-Go Girls, illegal, yet she was arrested for doing this. So anyway, I wanted to come and help. I'm an artist, and I wanted to come and help. So they said, okay, we need to have some posters sent out. Go up to this office, which happened to be your father's office on 57th Street. So I met Cy there, and going through the years, working on the festivals, every year the festival was at a different location. One year it was at Cars at Grand Central Station. The year I came into it, it was at Shea Stadium. And the artists had the whole space to use. And I remember the first time I came into the space, here's the baseball field, and in the front seats are these huge boxes. And oh my word, what is that? And then it dawned on me, box seats. And that was the piece of, was it Pike? Pike's piece, okay. So the artists could use the space specifically for their piece. There were video artists, there were film artists, there were sculptors, dancers. I mean, you name it, all kinds of artists that would submit a proposal for the piece. Andy, before the time of computers, would type up all these lists of all the contributing artists. I don't know how he did it. And all the contributing people who were support people for these festivals. So Cy, since he had his briefcase, suit jacket, or blazer, and a pipe, would be invited to come to the meetings with Port Authority because he was like the quote-unquote official guy. And because Charlotte would have to have these meetings with Port Authority to get permission to use these spaces. So
If I could just interrupt, just to say,
please do,
no,
please
I
do.
think it's just for people who might know this, the irony of my dad being the adult in the room shouldn't be lost on too many people, but please, carry on.
Yeah, so anyway, that's how I came into it. And your mother and father were so gracious in inviting us out to Fire Island. And I remember it was such a wonderful weekend. I think the first time we were out there was for Yom Kippur. I can still hear your father saying it, Yom Kippur, the way he would say it. And one of the things that was so neat, at that time of year, the ocean is still warm. So even though the air was cool, of course, I was swimming. And I guess I was the only one, but I love the ocean, I love swimming. But I took there are two photos, so this is a photo I took with a signed Mildred and Charlotte and Frank.
It's a beautiful photo.
Oh, thank you, yeah. And then there's another one that Charlotte took, I'm in the picture. But anyway, there were wonderful times. Then we went out again at Columbus Day. And I love that house with the courtyard and all the little rooms. And it was just a happy place. You could just feel the creativity and all the things that had happened. And so I would talk about all the times they would meet and they would show the films they had made, and he showed some of the films. And wow, these people really had fun. They were creative to their soul, to their heart. And it just kind of drew you in, and you wanted to be part of this community. So I'm very grateful to them for that. And then we always had New Year's Eve parties. And one year it would be at your house. And then the next year, I guess it was at Charlotte and Frank's or someplace else. And we'd end up telling jokes till 3 a.m. in the morning. Frank was a big joke teller. Your father liked to tell jokes. And I remember one of the times Charlotte was doing a performance. She did a performance for Yoko Ono. She and Yoko had been roommates when they went to Juilliard. And each of them had been married once early, young, and ended up getting divorced. So when they came together and were roommates at Juilliard, they shared a lot, Yoko Ono and Charlotte. So Yoko Ono did a couple pieces for Charlotte. One was cut piece, where she wears a gown and the audience is invited to come up and cut a piece of her gown. And this sounds like a very unusual thing, but when you see it performed, it's very, I don't know, I was going to say spiritual or holy or something. I can't exactly describe what it is, like a sense of quietness that comes up as everybody comes up. There's like a reverence involved in it. But anyway, Charlotte was going to be performing one of these pieces, and we were up at your parents' house. I don't remember if it was New Year's Eve or what it was. And Charlotte was very worried about the gown that she had worn. She always wore a very beautiful gown. She did performances at the Whitney Museum for Mamdouh Pike's performances. And she was very concerned about the gown, that it wasn't fitting. And she went to Mildred, and Mildred was the one who was fixing it. You know, and Charlotte said, oh, here, Mildred. Okay, so they went in the other room, and Mildred fixed it. So now I'm hearing that Mildred was a fixer person for the house, for people, for all these things. So she also fixed Charlotte's gown. And Charlotte was very dependent upon her for that. And I will say that I loved both Cy and Charlotte's artwork. I loved these stones. Every time you came to his house, when he'd get out the canisters and say, okay, pick some. My daughter was like 5 or 6 when we came up, and she just loved sitting on the floor in the living room going through these canisters. So I loved his work, and Mildred's paintings were so beautiful. There was a quiet essence and beauty to them, and you could see that she had studied not only the Impressionists, but some of the other artists too that her work is reminiscent of. And she was studying religiously faithfully or regularly at the Artist Students League, yeah. And I loved her paintings, but she was always very modest and humble. Like when we would go up for a party, you know, I'd go through the house and stand there with her and look at each painting, and we'd talk about them. And I couldn't get over how humble she was, because they were far more wonderful, I think, than she realized that they were. And when she moved from abstraction to realism and doing figurative work, she's a very good artist. And I just want to say thank you, Mildred. And thank you, Cy. You're wonderful people, and you gave a lot. Thank you.
May I?
Please.
It's the pressure of standing in front of the camera that was keeping me there, but I only have this one chance, right? So,
You only get one chance.
well, I just want to say, I'm younger than you guys, so, and when we left Fire Island after our father died, you know, I didn't know your parents as well, and sitting there I'm struck by 2 things. One is the movies. Going to your house, it was like a fairy tale castle. It was like a magic place. And my biggest memories are of Cy.
Yeah, mine
And then
too.
sitting there now as a grown-up with children, I think, my God, the woman behind that, you know, as someone said, the one that made the Kool-Aid, you know, like it was like bedlam, you know, hundreds of kids and in and out and sandy feet and the walkways around the atrium, and it was just like magic. And I feel blessed to have been part of that. And also just a memory of your dad, really, for the grandkids to know. The rocks, yes, the rocks. And I have a rock in London, actually, that said "For Amy from Cy," from, you know, must have been the early 70s, late 60s. But I remembered a day that, and he might have done this a lot, but I remembered a particular day where he somehow stuck a piece of fishing line under one of the rocks and put it down in the sand by the shore and sat in his chair and waited for someone to come, and he would just, you know, pull it, and it was so much fun to watch as the kids. But then he got bored of it, and he went, and everyone took turns with the size rocks. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. That's
I remember
crazy.
telling that story.
It was just fantastic, and what a character. So, as you know, I don't live in this country, so it's a blessing to be here today.
Thanks for being.
Do you live in London?
I do.
So I want to take your information.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Last chance? No? Okay. All right. So that's fine. Thank you all for coming. As I said, take a picture, take some rocks. You could probably take 3 or 4. That would be work fine. I think they both would have preferred to have their art around the world and in different homes and different places. The rocks I know are everywhere because my dad, you know, basically everyone should know the price. Everyone know what the price of a rock is? Yes. Someone should know what the price. What's the price?
Free.
No,
Not quite.
No.
Oh, you had to do something. You had to give him a hug.
Kiss.
Give him a kiss.
That's what. That was the price of a rock. Anyway, no charge today, but please take it. That's what they're for. I mean, so. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I want to thank Greg. Greg on the
Yeah, Greg, wow.
Greg, this is Greg's place, Talullah, great restaurant. Put a plug in for it, but he really, basically
Went all out.
gave us this space and gave us all this. So, really grateful for that. Thank you so much. And anyways, around, we'll be out on Fire Island August and September too. Apparently, actually, we'll be in not the Box Kite House, which is the legendary Andy Geller house. Not in the Box Kite House, but the replacement house, not nearly as nice as the Box Kite House, a little bit more practical. So we'll be out on Fire Island this summer. So anyway, thank you all for coming.